Marcus, are you good?
Yeah, I suppose to be. Do I need to close this other one at all?
Do you have your links?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm good. I got them.
Okay.
I tried to go to the other one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this one. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, so we see a black box.
We
Yeah,
can't
it's
see you
weird.
though, Marcus.
I know. I'm sorry. I clicked over and didn't bring my picture up. It just brought my voice up. So
Okay, so just to review, we are going to listen and learn and ask questions, and then we're supposed to have one takeaway to share. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm assuming we were supposed to completely close and leave the other meeting. That's what I did. So
Yeah, I think you have to.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, you're right.
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everybody. So I just want to make sure everybody knows everyone first. Oh, we just lost Marcus, I think. Well, maybe he's going to come back. Carrie, have you met Stephen and Dean? I don't know that you have or that they've met you. So I just want to make sure we know who everybody is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intros, it's great.
Okay, so hey Mark, oh yay, there he is. You found your way back. Awesome. So Marcus, I just thought it'd be helpful if we did some introductions to start, because I know that we may not know everybody. So I know both of you, and I think Carrie and Marcus, I think you know me as well, Executive Director of High Schools. Stephen, would you mind introducing yourself, and then we can kind of go around?
Sure. Stephen Duvall, Director of College and Career Readiness. Dean?
Hi, I'm Dean Richards. I'm the Director of Secondary Curriculum Instruction and Systems.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm Carrie. I'm a school board member. I'm a former teacher and school leader, and super happy to be here.
Marcus, school board member. I still teach at the college, and I run all the Afrocentric programming and leadership classes from Central Oregon Community College.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome to have your perspectives, Carrie and Marcus, on this particular goal. So that's exciting. So we do have there's just a few slides we wanted to share with you. We have some visuals. So Stephen, maybe you could bring those up.
If Hand in Hand will give me permission to share, because I can't share as it stands. So I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Let me send a text to Janet and see if she can help out.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about if we needed to give her the slides ahead of time. That was a wondering I had. Anyway, so when we have been thinking about the goal of passion, purpose, and planning, we're thinking about this in perspective of each of our students over the K-12 experience that they have in our schools, sort of leaving high school as the last grade on their journey with a plan in mind, or a couple of different plans in mind, in terms of what are they thinking about with their next steps with post-secondary planning for them. What are they really passionate about? What do they love to do? One in our high schools, and particularly our middle schools, is really around giving students lots of opportunities for different experiences to do some exploration. I guess I would say that's probably one of the strengths of our high schools. I think is there's lots of niches and places for students to hopefully find a place where they belong and can really enhance their interests and learn about different things that they might want to be exploring in terms of pathways after high school. And so what we thought we'd do today, there's really a lot to talk about. We were trying to sort of narrow it down to two big pieces that we've been working on as a team. Jen Hoth was going to join us this evening. She wasn't able to, but she's certainly been part of our planning team as well. It's just two big kind of, I guess, plans that we've been working on that we're just starting to roll out. So you guys are right at the beginning of this, which is exciting. And I think, Dean, were you going to go over the roadmap? Were you the first person up to go through that? Yeah, the license.
I think Stephen's going to start on that, and I'll talk about the curricular supports. Yep.
Oh, okay. So Stephen, you want to talk about the beginnings
Yeah,
of this?
and can you see the screen now? Is that working for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the same graphic that was shown in June when I was able to speak with Jennifer to the board a little earlier. But basically, we just met with the Center for Educational Leadership last week, really talking about student voice and student experience in our school. And one of the big themes in that conversation that really struck me that I think aligns with this passion and purpose is this idea of a limitless future for our students. And the idea that when our students leave our system, they can do anything they want. They're a full option graduate. They can choose a purpose and a plan that matches their interests and their drive, and they really do have this limitless future. And so part of what we're trying to do here is really interweave college and career readiness, social emotional learning, and positive youth development with an equity lens together to systematize and the idea of students understanding what paths that they can take, what interests do they have, learning more about themselves and their place in their community and their passions and their purposes and their backgrounds. Ultimately, then being able to gather knowledge of what they can do with that information, what paths are out there for them, because there isn't one path for students when they leave our system. There are multiple paths, and they should be able and be armed with understanding what those are and understanding more about themselves. And so we're trying to really tie this idea of who am I, what do I like to do, what are my strengths, what are my interests, how can I contribute to my community, with the knowledge of the system in terms of post-secondary options, apprenticeships, trade schools, college, community college, military, whatever path a student wants to take. A lot of times they're unfamiliar with what the steps are necessary to take, to how to take those paths. And so we're really looking at how can we as a system ensure that students have any option that they want when they graduate. And so this is a graphic that we showed that's kind of just an initial first step in terms of our system, in terms of what this might look like. We've had an internal group working on this. Some next steps for us with this is to get stakeholder feedback from our student and our community populations, and get some feedback from them in terms of their thoughts on this graphic and this idea and what next steps might be for us. And then from there, we're going to look and examine at programs that support this work, almost like a curricular adoption of SEL and college and career readiness, so that K-12, our students have a guaranteed experience when it comes to understanding themselves and the paths in front of them. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dean a little bit to talk about, like, when it comes to an initiative like this and when we do an adoption of a program to support students, how do we implement that? What does that look like? And how do we ensure that no matter if you're at Pine Ridge or Ensworth or Cascade or Pilot Butte, that you get this same experience in terms of learning more about yourself and what paths are out there that you might be interested in taking?
So I think that the important piece is we think about this work, and as Stephen said, where we're bringing a lot of big ideas together, and that ultimately allow our students to be able to walk out with that full option. Hey, what is it that you would like to do? And that those choices are not made early in their educational career, but get to have that full option as they walk out the door. So that's going to take some support for our teachers to be able to help our students to be able to understand that. So as we think about the K-5 experience, looking as we move down this path to find a curricular supports for teachers to be, and we'll of course run that by the board as well. And the trick will be as we begin, once we solidify this, is to find whether that's a purchase or whether that's going to have to be something that we have to pull on and lean on our experts from our community, not just the teachers, but also community partners and the voice of students to really help understand, to help our teachers understand how to help our students move that way. So ultimately, there will be a curriculum adoption component to this, Because I think a big idea of this is how do we, like, it's not going to just be a careers class in high school. So you can see, all the way back into kindergarten. How do we help teachers to help their students answer those questions of how do we learn and why do we learn? So that's another component that once this gets solidified, we'll be taking on with a big group of folks to get that done.
Yeah, that's one of my questions, and you can tell me if should we wait and do questions at the end, or
Yeah, why don't we go
yeah.
through the information, Carrie, if that's okay, and then we can do questions at the end. I'm timing us to get a sense of how much time we have. We actually have about 7 minutes left.
Yeah, and
It goes quickly.
I think we're going to get a 5-minute warning in the chat.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and they're going to stop the stuff right away at 20. They already told us that.
Yeah. So so that's I think so. Let's give those questions in a bit.
And so the another thing that we're trying to really get off the ground and is really in the beginning stages is, what does it mean to be college and career readiness, and how as a system can we track that our students really do have options when they graduate and they can pursue any path that they're passionate about? And so this document in front of you is from the state of California. It's an example. It's not what we're using. But when it comes to what kinds of things can we look to ensure that a student has options, these are some examples that California uses. For instance, they have to have their high school diploma plus something. The diploma by itself isn't enough to have any door open for you. And so things in here are, advanced coursework, college dual credit classes, military leadership science classes, CTE pathways. A to G, which is number 8 on there, is basically the admissions requirements for the Cal State system. So there's a variety of things that they track on top of high school graduation to point to students having opportunities. And so we're in the initial gathering of information and feedback stages of what kinds of things should we be looking to in our system to ensure that we can look to our students and how they're progressing, what they're getting in our system that will set them up to choose a path that's interesting to them and that they do have this limitless future. And so we're in the initial stages of this when we're, next 2 weeks from now, we're meeting with the counseling team and the Future Center staff to get input. We'll get input from students and from community members as well. And to kind of get this idea of like a portrait, like a portrait of a graduate. Within that, what kinds of things can our students do in our system to be prepared for different paths after they leave? And then Katie, since we're short on time, I think I'll turn this one over to you.
Yeah, so just real quickly to give you kind of an overview of some things that we currently have in place and that we're expanding. So we've had school to career coordinators in all of our high schools for several years, and that can vary from 1 to 2 based on how much the principal chooses to allocate the staffing, and then that's always a challenge, of course. And we do have a partner with EDCO. We hired an internship coordinator last year, and then we added money to that this year. So we're hiring a second internship coordinator to interface with our businesses in our community to provide opportunities for students to be in the community and doing job shadows, internships, and so on. We also added a lead counselor this year, Jess Calbreth, and she's going to be partnering with our school to career team, our counselors, to really try to integrate the work of counseling and school to career. That in most of our high schools, they operate pretty separately now. So how do we integrate the work of those two really important teams around this idea of life and career readiness? We also want her to help us develop a comprehensive plan for supporting classroom lessons and family communication activities. Again, that guaranteed experiences for students and for families. That's something we really want to work on. And one of the big questions out there is what system have a good system right now. So we are piloting a couple of different ways for us to be able to track what are the interest surveys that students are taking, what experiences are they having in terms of internships and so on, and then how does that culminate to their plan. So we've been kind of piecemealing that over the years, but we need a good system to track that. So I know I talked a lot. Do you guys have some questions for us? I think we have a few minutes.
Carrie, go ahead.
No, this started to answer it, at least at the high school level. My question is really just around like execution and fidelity, and how do we keep kids from falling through the cracks? And it looks like it's pretty clear at high school, ideally even in elementary and middle school. How are we starting to build in these systems? And, sometimes I feel like, just like at home, like when everybody's responsible for kids, nobody's responsible for kids. And so who is like the person in every school that is responsible for every kid for, really helping them through this?
It's our 5-minute warning, just in the chat.
Yeah, I think a couple of things carry to that point is I was just in an email chain with Jess, our COSA, our counselor on special assignment, and Jen Houth, who oversees the counselors, about this real push. Hanford just put out a study or more of a review on school districts that do this really well. And one of the themes, no matter, I think it was Chicago, Hawaii, there was a lot of different districts that they pointed to, is this idea of a personalized plan for a student. And that's supported by ASCA, the American Association of School Counselors, as well as ODE, really having this individualized, personalized plan for every single student. And that's something that we're working towards within this. And Jess is already starting to work within our system. How can our counseling teams at that building ensure that we do, and that no student slips between the crack? And we literally have a one-on-one conversation and plan throughout 7 to 12 really with our student population to ensure that we've had these conversations. We're talking about plan, we're talking about options, we're talking about things that they can do that if they, that match their interests. So that's one of the ways that we're really thinking about ensuring that nobody falls between the crack, and that we have a system of meeting with each individual student.
All right, cool. Anyone else before I go? Carrie, you got anything else before I go?
No, go for it, Marcus.
All right, here we go. All right, ready?
You're Jag.
Okay, you guys know I'm a school counselor, so I'm finna light some of this up. Sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just finna go there. One, we got to take college out of everything. Everybody's not going to school. Okay, I understand you got the CTE piece in there, but if a kid keeps seeing college in the verbiage, in the wording, everyone's not going to equip to go to school. What apprenticeships, what industry commitments do we have in place in terms of helping them as well, right? Because our industries here, most of our students don't know what industries are here, let alone know how to get started to work on them. So it basically goes back to what I was talking about, relationships. Next, you said purchase. Wait a minute, do we currently have someone here who does it well? Why go reinvent the wheel if we don't have to? If we got some people who do it well already currently in our system, I'm not saying lean on them totally, but can we utilize them to be able to kind of maybe help roll some of this out to model some of the things we're looking at? Okay, other piece, the EDCO piece, I got to push back. The coordinators, they've lost too many too quick. In the past 5 years, they've had over 10 reps try to be in that position. And sometimes I don't trust the numbers with EDCO in terms of their placements, because I don't know if they're totally fulfilling the sense if they go to these places with these internships. Are they helping these students continue to be able to know this is something they possibly want to go into, and what feedback and information are we getting from them? Don't get me wrong, I love John Stark to death. I love John Holman to death, but personally, I think there's too much inconsistency there. In terms of the principal allocation piece, in terms of resources and what puts out there, I think that's something we maybe need to talk from a district perspective, from a district office perspective. How can we work with them to say, hey, you need these for this reason? And here's why, because here's what our initiatives are in terms of that piece. I like the Hanford thing. I will research it more. And ASA did do that because I'm still a part of ASA. And we are looking at trying to figure out what personalized plans we can do that. Because think about it, if I'm a kid who is intuitively smart, I'm a great artist, but I'm getting C's and D's because the way people teach is not helping me, how am I going to get to that student? Additionally, those students who are in IB, can they go out and actually learn how to do something and apply it practically? Just because you know how to work the system and get good grades, but can you basically have a plan in place if I'm at that level of a student? be able to know how to basically manage people, work with people, and also not only just navigate the educational piece, how can I be a little bit better when it comes to my overall, how you want to say, organization? Because when they get to me at college, they are so lacking in so many things, and I have to go back and retool a lot of those things. So that's something I think we definitely need to really critically sit down and work on too.
And
Right.
Marcus, we have less than a minute, but I do want to point out that I glossed over this and didn't mention it, but we specifically removed the word college from this document to be life and career ready for that exact point. The team discussed that. It's in a couple of other verbiage that we do need to clean up, but we had the same thought, especially it being at first. College is a pathway towards a career, but it's not the only pathway, right? So that's why we're rebranding this initiative as life and career readiness versus college and career readiness. So I just wanted to point that out because I glossed over that a little too quickly.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. Because many students I've seen at graduations, we have all the college kids sitting in the front and all the kids who are doing other things dispersed in the back or throughout. And that's unfortunate that we do that.
Yeah, Marcus, we really agree with you on that one. And we're trying to think about how do we elevate apprenticeships and the CTE opportunities at the trade schools and maybe military, right? There's so many other options. A lot of that is going to be messaging.
Yeah, because I'd like
I appreciate that.
One thing I've learned, think about it, in 1970, Reagan took away a lot of those systems and programmings. You could be in high school and get your apprenticeships. They used to do it. Reagan took them out when he started stripping away a lot of the different programs that we had it. And also Bush continues to do the same thing. Even like, I hate to use the term prison, school to prison pipeline, but even in prison, you can still get your degree, but they have changed that a lot as well. But I digress from there. But we need to figure out how people can learn to use their hands because they can make livings by using their hands and they're not in debt versus going to school, coming out in debt. So let's figure out how we can retool that.
That's great.
All right, you guys, I think we're supposed to head back. Yeah.
Right. Thank you
both. Hey, Dean, can you text again to get me access to screen share?
Yep, we'll do.
I'm such a boring pairing. It's like.
No, you're not.
No, you're
No, you're
not.
no, stop.
Are we waiting for someone else or are you?
No, you can start, Katie. I'm just waiting to get
Okay.
the permission to share my screen again because it's a new link. So Dean's working on that, but feel free to
Okay.
launch.
Okay, great. Well, hi, Melissa. I thought the first thing we should do is make sure I know you know Stephen, but do you know Dean? Let's make sure we have introductions and everybody knows each other. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So what we've done for our presentation here is, first of all, kind of big picture and thinking about the goal, passion, purpose, and plan. We have been planning for this goal in terms of thinking of K-12. Sometimes when we think about this goal, we think about just what's happening at the high school, and we're thinking about what happens when a student first starts in our school system and when they're little people, and then what happens all along the way that we can do to help support this idea of them learning about what are they passionate about, what is their purpose, who are they, and then that culminating to a plan by the end of the high school for what they want to pursue after high school, maybe some ideas, right? And really, when we think about this in terms of like secondary, middle school, and high school, probably mostly in high school, we really try to create experience for our students where they have lots of different opportunities to explore and think about what are they interested in. And I think that is one of the strengths of our high schools, that we do have so many options for students in terms of thinking about, a CTE pathway or elective options that aren't necessarily CTE, and lots of different activities and opportunities for them to engage. And so what we're going to share with you today is a couple of kind of big visionary pieces that we're working on, and also then share a little bit with you about things that we have had in place for a few years, and even in the last year or two that we've added, mostly at high school, but kind of give you a sense of sort of where are we right now in the state of this particular goal. So I think Stephen's going to kick us off with the first slide.
Yeah, Melissa, you've seen this before. This is the same graphic from June, but basically one of the things, yep, there you go, you got it. So this is still in draft form, we're not done, but the aim of this is really to meld together this idea of what we would call college and career readiness, social emotional learning, healthy schools, and equity kind of into one package, and we're rebranding this life and career readiness. And really what it's looking at is there's some main components here is teaching kids the skills to be productive members of their community, which is really the SEL component. Having them be aware of themselves in terms of who they are, how they learn, where they fit in, in the community, what they like to do, what their interests are, just learning more about themselves. And then also starting to understand different options they have in the community and beyond. So what paths can they take? What paths are out there? Historically, we've kind of just taught about one path as you go to elementary to middle to high to college, and then you get a job. But in reality, that's one path, but there's also a ton of other viable and really well thought out options for them that can give them high wage, high skilled jobs in our community that are of interest to them. And so what we're trying to do with this initiative is systematize K-12, this process of learning about themselves and what potential paths are out there. And really to get them, we just met with CEL last week, the educational leadership group, and their big thing was around limitless futures. And so we're really trying to create a pathway for them that leads to a limitless future, or another term would be a full option graduate, that they can really take their interests and know what they can do with it versus not understanding what's out there or what paths they have in front of them and feeling like they have to take something that we've told them they have to take. And so where we are in this process right now is we've got a rough draft of this graphic that kind of talks about some themes based on grade levels, the skills knowledge at the bottom are the SEL skills, And then the outcomes are the Deschutes County healthy positive youth development outcomes. So it kind of all aligns there. But next steps are we need to get more feedback from our community stakeholders, and we need to get feedback from our students on this graphic and this vision, and then incorporate that into an updated version. So this is still in draft form. From there, then we're going to take a look at potential programs that we have out in that are out there that can help us with this to systematize and support teachers and buildings and counselors in ensuring that all of our students have this program or path that's guaranteed, that Ensworth and Miller or Cascade and Pilot Butte, no matter where you are, the students go through this process of discovering themselves and learning about different paths. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dean a little bit to talk about when we get to that point of like an official adoption, what does that look like, and how would we go from there to ensuring that it's implemented with fidelity at all our sites?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So I think the big idea is, because these are, really big ideas. So the big ideas. And so we want to be able to lean on the voice of our teachers and our students and our community members to help us understand how to actualize this in the classroom setting and beyond, thinking within counselors and school to career and mentors and community partnerships. So one of the things that once we finalize and get this really ready to go, pulling together teachers and students to say to really see how we want to actualize this within the school day, and how that looks different from an elementary to a middle, as the thinking becomes a little bit more conceptualized and starting to understand the future and the options ahead of them, so that when students enter high school, they start to have those more solid ideas about that plan, and that students can, as Stephen said, that idea of either limitless future or full option graduation. So that, to me, that full option means that when students walk out the doors of Ben Lapine schools, that they're not constrained by the experience that they've had, but instead that experience within Ben Lapine has helped them to see all of those possible futures, and that they get to choose that rather than be held back because they didn't have experiences along the way. So we're gonna, so the question will be, once this is finalized, are there materials already in place around this, or is there something that we're gonna need to lean on our in-house experts and our students in our community to be able to put these into action as we move forward? And so trying not to put too much of a cart in front of a horse, we are looking at a few things that are helpful in this process, but we want to make sure that we know exactly where we're going, that we have this river map to know where we want to get our students.
So one of the other things that we wanted to bring up is this idea of tracking how we know that our students will leave with a full option in front of them, or that they have a limitless future. This is a document from the state of California. It's how they track what they call college and career readiness indicators. And so this is an example. This isn't necessarily what we're going to do, but we are in the very, very beginning stages of starting to identify within our system, how will we know that our students are prepared when they leave our system to choose what path they want. And so, for example, in California, they have to have a high school diploma plus something else. And in these, it's any one of these. It's not necessarily all of, but it's things like taking advanced coursework or college dual credit courses, or participating in like junior ROTC military leadership science, or completing a CTE pathway and leaving with a certification in the field. Number 8 on there, the A through G requirements, that's essentially their college admission requirements, like the Oregon University. Oh, yep, you're familiar. You know your stuff. Mm-hmm. So we are starting to look at internally within Ben Lapine, because we don't have something like this with ODE necessarily, of what can we use as indicators that our students can leave as full option graduates. And so we're right now in the initial stages of talking with counselors, talking with our Future Center STC staff, Students will give us feedback. Community members, again, will also provide feedback. And then we're going to try and come up with some sort of document similar to this one, and then collect the data that would let us know that, hey, you know what? 87% of our high school graduates in the class of 2026 had, you know, a high school diploma plus this, so they have that path, or had +2, +4, whatever we decide. We're really looking at how can we track this to ensure that we're not just, you know, saying this is going to work. We need to make sure we're holding ourselves accountable and ensuring that our students have these pieces completed so that they have those options. And so that's where we are on that, but we wanted to bring that up as well, even though it's really in the beginning stages. And then I'm going to turn it over to Katie for the last slide.
Yeah, so this last slide is just to kind of give you an overview of some things that we've either had in place for a while, or we literally within the last couple of years or this year have added. So Melissa, I think you know this, we've had the school to career coordinators at all of our high schools for several years. In terms of, you know, those roles have been really instrumental in our high schools. But what's happened is, because we have different levels of staffing based on, you know, what the principal chooses to allocate, we can have maybe 2 coordinators at some schools and 1 at another. And so that's created probably some discrepancies between the number of students and the quality of the interactions that school coordinators are able to have. So that's something we want to work on, is what is that guaranteed, again, that guaranteed experience for every student. But we have those in place, and we'll keep those in place. We did forge a partnership with EDCO a couple years ago to hire 1 internship coordinator, Larry Holman. We were able to connect with them to hire. We'll be hiring a 2nd internship coordinator this year, with the idea that that person really serves as a liaison between our high schools and our school to career team, in trying to place our students in businesses or in our community, in internships or job shadows, with the idea to help, that gives them a sense of what does it feel like to be in a work setting. For example, we just forged a partnership with the Bulletin to have some of our students, this is something that Stephen was working on, to have some of our students do internships with the Bulletin because they're interested in journalism. So that kind of work is what our internship coordinators are helping us with. We did add a lead counselor this year, Jess Calbreth from Caldera has joined us, and she'll be instrumental counselors in school to career around this life and career readiness concept. And we've had a kind of a disconnect between our counselors and our school to career team and many of our high schools. So we want to connect those two and think about what does that look like to have them work together, and the roles of each. They're very important. And then also developing a comprehensive plan for supporting the classroom lessons and family communication and activities. Again, we've got pockets around our district where this is going really well, but we don't have the sort of the guaranteed experiences for our families and our students at every high school. And then the concept of tracking where our students are in terms of their experiences, maybe the interest surveys they may take over the course of their time with us. We've done that kind of through Google Docs and by school. And so we don't really have one system that we have in place where we could do that. And really, it's been pretty isolated at the high school. We haven't done a lot at K-8. So again, we want to expand this to be a K-12 focus, integrated focus for us around this concept of life and career readiness. A lot of the work's been done at the high school mostly, but we want to expand that for our younger learners as well. So that's a little bit of an overview of what we've had in place and what we've been put in place the last couple of years. So that's a bit of an overview. Do you guys have questions for us or anything else you want us to expand on?
Hold on, I'm going to get my paper copy because I literally just had this out. Yeah, I guess. First, thank you. Super excited about this work. When you talked about this graphic and the next step being feedback from stakeholders, I'm curious what types of stakeholders that is. And the reason I'm asking is because of that piece of how do you actualize it in the school day? So beyond a lesson and truly integrated into the experience at each grade level?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We are looking at stakeholders from the first next set would be the counseling and the counselors and future center staff. That's slated for August 30th. And then from there, we'll look to student, each high school, and I believe middle schools are going to have a student advisory panel that their students are going to be, connecting with administrators to give feedback and get some of that, what Sal calls street level data in terms of how things in the experience of the students. And we plan to lean on that a little bit and come out and talk to those teams and get feedback from students. And then we also would like to get feedback from our teachers as well, because this is a lift from everybody. After we finish kind of looking at within our internal system, then we'd like to look at some community groups and get some feedback from a diverse perspective of our parents and our community members from, the community colleges or our businesses or parent groups or different affinity groups in the community, just to kind of get this. Number one, we want this to be, when it does roll out, we want this to be like a very clear message for our whole community, because it's going to impact, because when the students leave our system, a lot of times they stay and they contribute to our community. And so we want our community vested in that process. So it'll finish internally, and then we'll look to, like community, college, business partners, parents, and other groups in the community. Oh, I think you're muted, Melissa.
Sorry, I saw the word lesson. And so is this being envisioned as a series of lessons, or?
It's a hybrid. There will be components where there will be lessons, and that's why we're going to look at a variety of different systems and programs that are out there, because how do they integrate it? What we don't want is necessarily a standalone thing where a teacher has to like pause, put everything over here, and then do this. We want these kinds of conversations to be integrated into the day and just be more of natural practice. And so we're going to look into programs that do that and do that well, and have suggestions in terms of pedagogy and instructional moves that can help with that. I mean, there are simple things that we can do in terms of, like, especially when it comes to the elementary school and the SEL integration. We're going to work in a group today on this project. These are the things that a successful group does, and these are the things that people in that group do to make it look successful. Like, those are simple things that a teacher can call out and really reinforce those skills, but then give kids the opportunity to practice a group on science or whatever. So we don't have to necessarily pause. So we're going to look into that, but there may also be times and places where lessons fit in, especially I'm thinking about like career lessons in the middle school when it comes to that interest inventory and doing something like a U-Science self-exploration tool, and then understanding the results and the pathways that I have in front of me based on my interests. There might also be some advisory lessons at the high school setting to support this work as well. So it's we're going to kind of try and do a little bit of both. We want it to live with everybody, and where it makes sense to integrate it into practice, we're going to push for that. But there also will be specific topics that need to be called out and taught in different variety of settings.
Yeah.
And I think that's for the part where finding that, are there curricula supports that we can have, because we don't want to leave it just because it's such a heavy lift to teachers to have to do this all on their own. So we want to be able to provide them curricular supports. And because these essential questions, which is, think about that third grade question, who am I? It's like, well, we could wrestle with that till, ourselves till the end of time. So it's these are big ideas, and being able to make sure that there are supports for teachers before we ask them to actualize this in the classroom.
Yeah. I think one comment I would make for the elementary piece is really, I would encourage you to look at experts in social studies and language arts, the humanities curriculum as well. The first grade standard is a direct match. The first grade one is a direct match, and there's often places that you can, when it's part of what you're studying, they're mapping their community and all of that. That one matches perfectly. So I would encourage looking at humanities as well for the elementary grades that don't have the advisory. And then For the middle, well, then second, I would, if you're looking for resources, Steve probably knows this is coming, but I would definitely, I'm interested if you've looked at EL education and their core benchmarks and how they approach true integration of career readiness. And if you haven't, I would, because it begins in kindergarten with, every study, you're talking about a job that, you're teaching kids to think like an ornithologist or, et cetera, but they've got some great practices in this area. And then the third thing is a question for you in the middle school, because Stephen, I know with like Mountaineer Time, with such a strong structure. And do you feel like on the loose tight, you have a structure in the middle schools and the high schools that is consistent enough across all of your schools that can hold some of this work?
Not yet, but we are aiming to. For instance, this year, it is a requirement for all our middle schools to have that advisory time. That is built into the schedule. It is a requirement. High school, we're not quite there yet. We have, the rotator schedule that provides some opportunity. Caldera has an advisory, but I know Katie's got that on her mind, and it's in terms of future planning when it comes to scheduling with the rest of the buildings. I know we're headed that direction to have some more consistency for those opportunities. But middle school, yep. Like they're waiting. They have the time set aside and they know that this is a part of that and they're waiting for that next step. High school, I think, is more in process, and I'll let Katie maybe speak to that and where she's at with that.
So all of our high schools have an advisory schedule that can either happen as needed or like weekly. Caldera is well, I would say Caldera, Lapine High School, BTA, Realms, they all have a regular, like 4 days a week advisory or crew class that meets. Summit and Mountain View have, a once a week kind of thing. So we're getting there where it's a more regular time period, which is progress. But yeah, we've talked about that quite a bit. Advisory can be seen by some high school staff as a very unproductive time. Unfortunately, it can get a bad rap. It has gotten a bad rap a little bit. And so we have to think carefully about, okay, if we are requiring this, what is happening during that time, and making sure it's meaningful for students, it's meaningful for staff, and staff feels comfortable as though they have the ability and understanding of what is supposed to be happening during that time. So we just want to be really thoughtful about that.
And that's where I think those curricular supports can be of help, right? Because it's like here's our outcomes that we're seeking, and here's some ways that you can help support students to answer these questions.
Yes, and we've also we actually, through the High Desert ESD, support from Brooke there. Oops, sorry, that was my timer going off. I'm trying to keep track of time here. She helped us purchase what's called a career tree for all of our CTE programming. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But basically, it's a really nice visuals that actually counselors can use that really shows through a career pathway, what are the different options for students in terms of levels of education based on what they want to do and how they want to pursue the particular career pathway. It's really a nice talking point. We haven't done a lot of, we purchased it literally right before COVID happened. So we have PD around it. But it's an amazing tool for school to career CTE teachers and our counselors to use to get kids to think, kind of open their minds about what are the possibilities. If I'm really passionate about manufacturing, what are some options for me when I think about down the road, what does that look like in terms of a pathway, either during high school and or after high school. So that's a tool we haven't really, in my opinion, fully utilized yet, because we had closed schools and so on. But I know it's a tool the CTE team is really excited about. So there's a lot of conversation around how do we integrate all this through our CTE and our elective courses as well, which feels probably a little more natural.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get this year, but just it'll be exciting to see the list of pathways that we have in our school. I think that the board would love to see that.
You know, we could put together a pretty cool presentation for the board about our CTE work in this district. It's pretty phenomenal. So
Yeah.
just let us know when, Melissa.
I think that puts us in time, so we need to go back to our big group. Or, yeah, everyone does actually. Oh, no, you guys still don't. Never mind.
Yeah, we still need to go
Yeah.
because the link changes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thanks.
Well, we lost Carrie, but we gained Steve. So we're shuffling up the groups now, right? The partnerships. Okay.
Yeah, now we had to pick one place to be an expert. So
Okay.
Carrie is now partnered with Melissa and I'm partnered with Marcus for the expert.
Perfect.
Stephen, you're muted.
And you guys are just discussing with each other and we're just a resource during this 10 minutes, correct, Steve?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So Marcus, I hope you're the one that's going to share because I want to make sure I'm keeping my mouth shut.
In terms of this piece, I love the process. I can see they're identifying areas where we feel strongly that we need to make some changes and restructure and look at, like I said earlier, about reculturing a lot of the stuff that we do. I like the fact that they're starting to help students understand it's not just college, it's more than, and then also how do we apply it? The question I wanted to ask earlier, and so subject matter experts are here, is how does grading come into this, right? If we're shifting grading, what does grading come into this? Because like I was saying about the IB student, I'm not knocking the IB student. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm saying is, if that student is one of your brightest kids and they're doing a lot of work, and I know how rigorous that curriculum can be, because a lot of them say they wish they could do other things other than just IB too. They've said that as well. What other things can I do? Because if we're going to put them in, we're saying they're our brightest, what are we doing to teach them other pieces, like the management piece, the leadership piece, the inclusive piece? How do we do things? How do we build relationships? Because that's the one thing I'm noticing is when we got to school, if a kid is bright, he goes to one place. If a kid is mediocre, they stay here. But if they are less than in terms of academically, they go here. And those kids notice those separations, right? But if that kid at that so-called C and D level, they may be that top level. But the problem is, have we found ways to build relationships to be able to pull that out of them, right? Because that's one of my critical pieces of that. And the other piece is, how do we continue to work with industry to see what their needs are, and do they have the willingness to provide resources to help figure that out? Because if I'm a CEO of a company and I have a community of bright students, how can I tap into them, not just to get them to be productive, but get them to figure out what the future looks like so we continue to be able to enhance the community as a whole? Another piece, how many times have we sat down and said, hey, prime example, I used to give students, when I worked in Michigan, I took them to our city, and I will make them say, let's look at the carbon footprint of our town. What does it have here for you? What it doesn't have. If you had to build something as a project, what would you build? What would you create? What would you do, right? And how would you solve that problem? And what resources in the community would you be able to go to? Currently, I don't know if many of our students could do that, right? If I want to go into engineering, what engineering firms are close by to give me the expertise or things I need? Our school can work with that. And I know, Steve, you guys are working on initiatives to do the CTE hub here, but that's years away. What can we do beforehand, right? The other piece is, what can we do to help them understand that from a hierarchical standpoint, you got to be a little bit more diverse in terms of who is there. I'm not just saying people of color. I'm not always going to say that. What I'm saying is diversity in terms of, is it women? Is it disabled? Is it whatever? Is it different people from different backgrounds, different lived experience? Because I sometimes think we forget to do that, right? We forget to include the lived experience piece into that. And also, is it equivalent to being able to help provide and be able to get them there? The reason I was talking last time about what I do at the college is I teach college and career success. So for you to be successful within this system, I teach them how to do that. But what I'm trying to show them is not this same tools can help you not only be good with the system, but can be good for the whole entire world, what you do, right? So are we giving the students ultimately the tools to be able to do that? And when they step out is what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to look all pretty and shiny. It could be as basic as, hey, like y'all stated in the presentation, step one, I'm going to do a CTE class. Step two, I'm going to take a science class, and it's going to help me understand how I can use that CTE class, right? But if I'm in that CTE class, how does it help me be able to go do this history class that I'm going to as well, right? So how do we start putting a lot of that together? And that's what true pedagogy looks like in my mind, in terms of looking at what we're trying to do and trying to get students there. And then the final piece, and it's probably one of the most critical pieces, how do we build relationships with the families to know exactly what motivates the student, but also what motivates them to try to get the student where they can have sustainability once they leave school, right? Because a lot of times I think we overlook that piece, because we forget to figure out from the student what motivates them to get them to want to be a part of whatever. Prime example, what motivates my son is computer time. But for him to do that, I got to help him get there, right? So for him to do that, I need him to do a chore, or I need him to figure out why he has to do something else before he gets that computer time, right? So how do we motivate the students to say, hey, I'm a CD student or I'm an F student. How do I take the skills that I am learning in class to be able to get to a C and then get to hopefully a B if we can get them there? But that's just grade purpose, but like trying to get them to see what that A, B looks like in their mind, not has to be on paper. You know what I mean? To be able to give them the ability to feel confident in doing so. I know that's a lot quickly, but
I think one of the things that stood out to me is that we've got this happening and it's in pockets. It's happening in our schools, but there's no consistency of practice. And I think Katie mentioned a guaranteed expectation that every kid experiences this. So how do we scale this so that as we're building the system, that it is that tight, loose model, that it lives everywhere, at least to the extent that we say you have to have some expectation of that. And I think one of the ways that we could find that being more fairly distributed amongst the high schools is through that what do you call the high school diploma, Stephen? Not the honors one, the one that the California version, the thing that you put up for that screen.
The full option diploma.
The full option diploma. Yeah. The
Mhm.
full option diploma.
Right.
Now that's something that a kid, as soon as they're a freshman, they're like, tell me more about that. What does that
Mhm.
mean? How do I get exposed to multiple opportunities? I think that's going to be the places where we can start to make those expectations more consistent across all of our high schools.
yeah, big time. Because I'm noticing there's a lot of gaps in what happens. Like I said, I have the privilege of being able to be at the community college level, of how some students, even some of our brightest students, they get to us and they fail miserably because no one's taught them not just process, but organization, but not just organization. But if I get in a pickle, how do I get out of it? Because mom and dad a lot of times have solved a lot of that, or they don't know how to do it peer to peer. Right. The best thing I heard today or yesterday in a podcast about this whole situation, it was on education. They says, how can we be a village to our students if the village is broken? Right. So we got to make sure the village is tight and making sure that the things are in place for the village to be successful. Right. But if the village is bickering too much or not really seeing eye to eye, then the whole system fails. Right. So that was the key piece of it, is how do we continue to do that and not just be inclusive in those conversations, but you have the willingness to want to say, okay, here's some changes we need to make and not be reactive and actually be proactive ahead of time.
So we have about 2 minutes. We need a sentence, a phrase, and a word, Marcus.
Okay.
There's the word.
My dog. That's the word.
That's the word.
Okay. The sentence for me is about this whole thing. Is like I say a sentence is, oh shoot, where's my glasses? See, now you're gonna make me bring my marketing hat out. Okay, here it is. The sentence would be, the district is in the process of providing and ensuring that our students are successful. I think that's the most critical piece. What was the second one? We need a phrase, right? Okay, a phrase.
And I just from like, I love that limitless future or full option graduations. I mean, they're quick, and I'm just thinking of time. So it's something that we talked about.
Okay.
Maybe that's one that to plant a seed with you guys.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcus, remember our phrase is life and career readiness. So it's
Cool.
like expanding it, beyond just college.
I wouldn't say life and career readiness. I would say our phrase would be oh my God, life and career readiness. Life and career development, I would definitely change that. I wouldn't say readiness. I would say development. You know what I mean? Because you're in development and in the middle of developing them. And I would say the one word for this right now would be Oh, wow.
It's a weird word, but exposure, maybe.
Exposures are great. I like exposure. I can go with that. Yeah, I was thinking
Exploration, maybe,
Maybe.
exploration is great.
you know, you're exploring,
Yeah, hold on, but I'm really exploring is always great. But my thing is though, I would rather say
your limitless future.
no.
I think we're being,
Marcus, you're muted.
yeah, I think we're getting called back.
The one thing I want to say is that we're not there yet. So I'm trying to think of a word that shows, hey, we're getting there. We're progressing toward that way or something, you know?
Progressing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Dean.
Yep.
Because we're not there yet, but we hopefully hope to be.
All right. See you guys back. Thanks.
Cool.